I probably would have still came out, but who knows when, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But his interview just made me. Every other interview, I would just look at it and just like, yeah, that person doesn't look like they have faith, or that person's been baptized for a month. What? But
Uh-huh.
when I saw Adam's, when I saw the thumbnail with him and Kayleen, I was just like, I know these people. They're not. I
Yeah.
know who they are. I was just with them not too long ago, and I just clicked it, and yeah, that was it.
So what part of the interview like stood out to you most? Or I mean, because one of the things I think about when I think about Adam and Kayleen's interview is the three missing chapters section. I know that was a big emphasis for them.
Yeah.
But for you, like what? Because it's, I guess, it's a big thing for somebody in the church with a leadership position to click on a video in the first place, but to click on it and then have it do something more than just be like, oh, well, whatever, they're just slanders, and then leave an angry comment and go about your day. To have it not be that, but to have it actually impact you. Yeah, I'm really curious, like what part of what they said kind of clicked with you?
So with so there's a little bit more to the backstory. In the first interview I did with Adam, I explained a little bit that it had just been a few rough years that in the church where it was just becoming very, very stagnant. It was just repetitive, and you could kind of start seeing the flaws in everything. And so my mind was already wandering a little bit. I had met with Adam, right? Maybe the September before the interview with you. And when I met with him, he brought up some of the things that he brought up in the video. And at that moment, because I guess it was kind of confrontational in a way, it didn't really hit me with everything. But when I was able to just watch his interview and just listen for once, I was like, oh, damn, that's a great point. Like, yeah, why do we demonize people who speak out? Why is the root of David's chapters out? And yeah, why, what is our explanation about that? And I never gave it too much thought. The power of inoculation cannot be underestimated. I'm sure with Adam, you've spoken about, they used to refer to these Bible studies as vaccination. Okay, brothers and sisters, give them the vaccination, protect their faith. But, they're telling us there's information out there that doesn't look so favorable upon us. And you should probably tell them first, so that when they hear it out in the world, out in the wild, it won't hit as hard as it could possibly hit. For example, when I first heard about Ahnsahnghong and God the Mother, Zhang Gil Jah having children, it was during an education, like a big church, major church education in LA, and nobody else was freaking out. And I was like, did he just say they have kids? And I was tripping. I was like, what? Because, I was a young kid and I was already thinking like they were having intercourse, and wait, they were married to other people, but they're supposed to be holy and godly. But, me being young, I kind of have like a wrong idea of what sex could be. So I took it as like, why is God having sex in the flesh, And obviously, and it's funny because everybody else roomed with people their age, but I roomed with I think 2 deacons and like just older brothers. They were just way older than me. And I think it was strategic because they noticed that I was not having a good reaction to it. So that evening in the hotel, they just were all talking to me about and just explaining everything. And of course I calmed down, but you could just see when someone knows something ahead of time, they can withstand it. But when they don't know something ahead of time, they could freak out.
Yep.
So going back with Adam, yeah, I guess I was hearing it again from his voice. I was just like, oh, damn, that is true. And obviously I clicked on his channel right after watching your interview with him, and just hearing Adam talk so frankly about it, the frankness in his voice, I was like, oh my God. I can't, yeah, he's right.
Do you think it was like picking up on the honesty? Because I think that's something that I think within the group, within the WMS and other groups like it, there's such a like this manufactured sense of self that you kind of, put on yourself and you kind of put out there into the world around you. There's just such a shallowness, a fakeness. Like there's this facade that I don't think, as members, you're probably not like 100% aware of, but I'm sure that for many of you in the back of your mind, there's just kind of this nagging sense of there's just something not right there. And so, I mean, I would think that seeing somebody and hearing somebody like Adam or any former member talking and just hearing, you can listen to any of the interviews from former members and there's just like this realness, this sincerity, there's this honesty. And also I think what another aspect of that is that you see that, wait a minute, these people aren't like just being evil and like they don't have red eyes and like satanic wings popping out of their backs. It's like they're just people that are just trying to figure things out and they're just sharing their honest struggles inside the church and what their honest reasons were for why they left. And so I'd imagine for somebody who, any member that would actually just take the time to listen to that, I would think that would be something that would probably stand out a little bit and be hard to not take notice of.
Yeah, because in the church, it's, you probably heard this term before, virtue signaling. So somebody will openly voice a struggle in the world, and people will be like, "Oh, that person cares, or that person's knowledgeable about those people's plight." So they're virtue signaling, right? Because somebody could pick up on it and say they're just trying to win brownie points with a particular group. So that's essentially what the life is like in the church. Everybody's virtue signaling. Everybody's, who can say thanks to Father and Mother more, who can serve more, who can. So it is like a facade. It is like it's an act, and you're just keeping up a show. And, I've spoken like that with Adam. He's spoken like that with me. And when I heard in the first few his intro video, I think like 2 or 3 videos after that, I just ran through them, and in his normal voice, it's Adam's voice. It's like, just hearing somebody speak so clearly, frankly, about the situation. And he made it clear. I'm not like, I don't not believe in Zhang because she's Korean or she's old or, we speak Korean. It's because just the lies, there's no transparency in this place. And they're just demonizing people who just ask the questions. And, to me, I couldn't take it anymore, and I left. So just hearing him speak like that, it was just, it was like one day you see somebody, the next day you're like, oh, they're the same person, but they're just speaking openly about these things that we all that I buried and never really gave much thought to.
Yeah. Well, before we go any further here, let me mention that Adam here is going to be co-hosting with me today because, as you can hear, there's some intertwining of stories here. So, Adam, real quick, could you introduce yourself, and then, and also as is being mentioned here by Erick, Adam has a channel, Finding the Alternative, where he has a lot of former member interviews and his own content over there. So make sure to go subscribe to him. I'll put a link in the description of the video. But yeah, Adam, talk real quick about your channel, about yourself and why you're here today.
Yeah, so my name is Adam. I'm a 10-year former member of the World Mission Society Church of God in Salt Lake City. I was a unit leader for quite some time, house church leader for some time, had the church in my house for a few years, and was a really active member. I was in choir, I was announcing, passed off my 50 subjects. So I was really involved in the church, doing community service projects, the works. And I left September of 2024. So a little over a year at this point of recording. And my channel, like Jordan said, is called Finding the Alternative. Essentially what it is, I provide an alternative to the WMSCOG theology. I take the WMSCOG's claims and I just put it up to Scripture, put it up to the light of Scripture, put it up to the light of facts and history, and just see if that's actually what the truth is, if that is what reality is. And my goal is not to make you leave or join WMSCOG in any way, shape, or form, but just providing you the other side that you wouldn't hear in the World Mission Society Church of God. So if you're going to devote your life to something, I feel like it's good for you to have both sides of the story, not just the one altered narrative that they can provide. So that's essentially what I do. And like Jordan said, I have former interviews on the channel. You can actually watch Erick's interview too. And Erick interviewed his fruit that he brought into the church as well. And yeah, just glad to be here. Glad to see Erick on this channel. It's been a long time coming. I never would have dreamed that Erick would be on here. So I'm glad to be here, and it's going to be a good ride.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. And Adam, before you were kind of mentioning that, you would have never, kind of what Adam was just saying, you would have never imagined yourself sitting here talking with me or being on this channel. So maybe kind of fill people in who aren't familiar with you on what your position was in the church, like how long you were in. And yeah, just so people kind of have an idea of what's kind of behind your story.
Yeah. So right off the bat, my name is Erick. I am a former World Mission Society Church of God member. I was baptized in 2012, and I left the church this year in 2025. I was in the church for like 2 weeks shy of 13 years. So essentially 13 years. When I first came to the church, it was in Salt Lake. It was one member's family. He was leading the church, like his wife, his brother-in-law, and his mother-in-law, and then one couple. And there was like one other family, two females and their mother, and essentially that was it. And then me and my wife came in. It was in an office plaza, and just, we were the new shiny toys, and everything just seemed so new. And yeah, we were essentially from the beginning, we would be called pillars of Salt Lake City. So the foundation, the pillars, the very beginning, on which everything else was built. I was, so from one moment, we'll get into this, but one day we're just regular members. The next day we're meeting with the overseer, and he's telling us we need to be gospel workers because Mother ordained it this way. So we start doing it, and we're in the church. We move into an office building in 2015, October, actually just passed. In 2020, 2020 December, I received the title of deacon after being in the Sangdo, or pre-theological student education. It's monthly packets where you complete sermons, evaluations, preaching to a certain number of people with the expectation to bear fruit and have them start tithing. So this is what moves you month to month in that program. Obviously in 2020, everything shut down, so you couldn't really bear fruit. At that time, they switched it over to evaluations. I was able to get a couple of evaluations, and I received the title of deacon, myself and my wife. I worked up until that time. I was also a unit leader. Was a group leader from 2018 until when I left 2025. So yeah, I was a deacon for 5 years, group leader for about 7 years, unit leader maybe 9 years. So it just kind of goes back like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And Adam, also feel free to jump in if you have any points you want to make or questions you want to ask at any point. But I guess this is kind of a silly sounding question, but just for the sake of those listening, I want to ask, like, did you believe this stuff? Like, did you believe it was true? Were you all in? Were you 100% convinced? Because, members will come up with, when they hear former members will come up with all sorts of kind of reasons to explain away why somebody would, speak out against the church. And one of those might be, oh, well, he never believed in the first place, or he never was really in this church or committed to it, or he never really had faith, whatever, fill in the blank there. So my question to you is, did you really believe this? Did you really believe that Zhang Gil Jah was Heavenly Mother, Ahnsahnghong was Second Coming Christ, and all the rest?
Well, if I didn't believe, I sure made it seem like I did, because I worked really hard to bring in all my family, my siblings, my mom, my dad, my cousins. I would join really early on. I started preaching. It didn't take me a long time to start to preach. Actually, the first time I went preaching is because I requested to go. So I wanted to go. And in the beginning, I was if you've heard about it, I'm sure you've heard about it, the Daniel and Revelation studies. I thought that if anybody just gives it a chance, everybody will come to this church because we have this study of Daniel and Revelations. And I really wanted to share that with somebody, even the first time I went out preaching. I heard it so many times in the first couple months that I was able to just tell this without having a sermon book or without having officially learned it. I can relay the story. I can essentially teach Daniel's prophecy. I joined preaching meetings. I joined short-term mission groups. I would take days off of work. I was in the choir as well. I led Bible studies for people who came in. I translated Bible studies at the beginning. I would start then doing the studies in Spanish. I would bear fruit. I would guide them to baptism. I would, nobody, if you're being honest, nobody could ever say I didn't have faith. People should remember I would weep. I would weep in the church when somebody was baptized or when a sermon came on about Zhang or about An. I would shed tears. I would, listen to fragrances. I would give fragrances. I would be a regular fragrance giver. I would pray at the end of services. So yeah, I really believed it. It's, now it's kind of a little bit my shame, but I absolutely did believe it. Sure, the idea of Ahnsahnghong and Mother they're a little fantastical. Absolutely. But, when this organization comes by and they can kind of clearly show you, for example, myself, they showed me Daniel and Revelations, and I thought that was totally plausible. And it just made sense. And I was like, oh yeah, Sunday is not in the Bible, but everybody does it, and Christmas and the cross and, all these pagan customs. And there is so many churches in the world. Why is that? And then, when they piece it together, it can only be resolved by a second coming, and that has to be before the end. So when they put all the pieces together, yeah, it's totally, it's believable, if that makes sense. But I absolutely had faith in that place. Absolutely.
I was gonna say, if you didn't have faith and you were just acting, that's like an Oscar-worthy performance. Because I remember you rebuking me for the dumbest things all the time.
Yeah.
And I would say if that's and I have seen him cry doing fragrances and stuff, and I wasn't. So I mean, he's a better actor than me if that's the case, and I would say probably even a better actor than Zhang Gil Jah and Kim Joo-chol.
Yeah,
and they're good. That's saying a lot, huh?
I would pray to really drive it home. I prayed. I would pray, Father, Mother, when I became a dad, I was like, let my child's life be so blessed. Let them be healthy. Let them be good. I'll offer them to you. Like I would literally I offer them to you. They're yours. Do whatever, let them be gospel workers, but just let them have healthy and good lives, So if that's not faith, I don't know. I don't know what is.
Yeah. Well, following that question then, how are you doing now? Because, man, almost 13 years and being so devoted to this thing, so emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, in every aspect of your life, was this church. And so, in the long run, you haven't been out all that long, comparatively. So how are you doing with that? Like, how has that been processing that? That's a dramatic shift of worldview, and probably figuring out what does it look like now to even exist in this world? How do I think about things now? How do I relate to people? How do I relate to, movies and music and my work and money and everything? It's just all of it is impacted by that. And so to leave, that's such a dramatic shift. And so how are you? How is that going?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I will say I'm thankful that I never became a branch church manager. I never became a pastoral staff, where I would really it was like I didn't get married. I didn't get arranged marriage in the church. So I had a normal wife. I had a normal family. The church will teach you a certain amount of things and essentially just, okay, do you know enough? Great, go out and preach. But I would I don't know if this is a word, supplementalize my faith. So I would look at theist Bible debates. I would look at church history. I wouldn't just eat from the church. I would also eat from, outside sources. So I would say, well, even though my church doesn't educate me on a lot of these things, I am going to combine that with my understanding that I have in this church. So I will say it wasn't, I guess I'm lucky. I think I know other people that are not like this, where all they eat, all they think, all they believe is just general pastor sermons, general pastor's books, Ahnsahnghong's books, and just rinse and repeat. That's it. So I guess I'm kind of lucky where it's like, it wasn't like I wasn't far gone. You know what I mean? I wasn't like a clone of theirs where it would be devastating. It was definitely very tough when I first saw Adam's interview, even though I knew it was going to be painful. I watched it. When I went to his channel, it was very painful because it's like an act of deconstruction. My brain is literally like falling apart as I'm listening. So, I will say I'm glad I had support systems outside the church. So I had my wife, who was never a fanatical either, even though she was in there. My wife's family, my own siblings, none of us were really fanatical. So I had a good support system. Well, we can get into that in a little bit, but it wasn't immediately supportive, but it was definitely devastating at first. And yeah, it was really tough. Right now, I'm so lucky that I left the church in this year because there's so much content from former members. Your channel, Adam's channel, the Pit podcast, Michelle Cologne's website. There's just so much information out there that I essentially did like self therapy, I guess, where I would, take in all the content that they had, and I was broken, but I was able to kind of fix myself and just soothe the burns, if that makes sense. But right now, I'm doing good, living life as well as much as I can.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you were exposing yourself to other ideas and other, teachings, it sounds like, even within evangelical Christianity or wherever they were coming from. That kind of reminds me of Edgar. I don't know how much of him or his stuff you're familiar with, but I know that while he was doing a lot of that as well, just kind of exposing himself and listening to a lot of different things that weren't just the materials of the church.
Yeah.
Was that something that you were, I guess, like as a member at that time, like why were you doing that? And I guess the reason I asked that is because I don't feel like that's necessarily like a normal thing. And I think more than that, not only is it not really normal, I think that's kind of frowned upon, or correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something that would be frowned upon and forbidden even in many cases, because these other groups, according to the teaching of the church, they're false prophets, and they're
Babylon,
basically being led by Satan. And so I guess, like, what was it that led you to do that and made you feel comfortable with it?
Funny enough, early on, the overseer that we had in Salt Lake, as soon as he arrived, like in 2013, before that, it was just sermon book, general pastor sermons, repeat, but when this new overseer arrived, he was like, within the first week, he was like, have you guys seen theist debates with atheists? It's super interesting. And I was like, oh no. So I watched a couple of, like, I watched Frank Turek, Dinesh D'Souza, when they would debate, like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens. And I was like, okay, so I can kind of explore a little bit. So I would look at that. It is a little bit of a cognitive dissonance because I'm listening to these amazing points that they're making, but I'm also thinking, well, too bad, they're going to go to hell because they keep Sunday and they keep Christmas. Early on, I looked at, but yeah, so I really like these guys. What's the other gentleman? William Lane Craig, right? I would watch him and just, oh my God, this guy's just dancing around. Like, he's making a lot of amazing points. It's absolutely there's a God. So one of the first activities I try to do, being kind of like a leader, is I looked up non-biblical sources or non-biblical records of Jesus's existence and the early church. So I was really excited. I was like, I can't name him now, but Joseph, right? Or Plighty the Younger, I believe. I don't know. It's been
about Josephus.
Josephus. What did I say? Joseph?
Yeah, like Joseph. You mean like
it's close enough.
Hebrew?
There you go.
Yeah. So Joseph was a Jewish historian. Yeah.
Yes, and there were
the first century.
Yes. There were a few other sources. They were speaking badly about Christianity, but nonetheless, it was still proof that this religion existed early on. So I presented that to the overseer, and I was like, hey, I want to share this with the brothers, and is that okay? And he's like, well, double check that, quadruple check that, make sure it's all valid, and then you can do it. But it was just done with such like a little animosity. I was like, okay, so I shouldn't be doing it. So I kind of took the note, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this because it doesn't seem like it's something that is okay. Later on I would hear a member say, "Oh, there was this really awesome documentary on the History Channel about the Book of Revelations, or the book of, the number of the beast, or something like that." And that overseer also later on said, "Okay, members, let's not encourage members going on webs or looking at documentaries like that. It can kind of skew their idea of what the church is, or what the Bible is."
You mean it could destroy the fragile narrative that we've spun, and
Yes.
people could possibly start thinking realistically and logically about the things that we teach. Is that a fair translation of that?
Pretty much. Yeah. All we want them to be taking in is what we have for them. Even though I witnessed that, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to do it for myself. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to prep myself so that when I come across somebody who's a staunch atheist or a skeptic at the door, I'll be able to respond to them. And it would work sometimes. They would say, "Oh, there's everybody laughs at the idea of Jesus existing." And I would say, well, even, I think everybody believes that he at least existed, whether he really was the Son of God or God himself. Like, that's up for debate, sure, but nobody really. So these kind of things. So I would educate myself, and never really talk about it. From time to time, I might bring it up, but it was always something that I just did for me.
Yeah. And I would imagine just having that exposure to those different ideas and all that different information that was, external to the church. I'm sure that's probably, I could see how that would be helpful in your time of leaving and transitioning out and kind of learning to exist in the world outside of the church, just because, you're already kind of familiar enough to know that, hey, not everybody out here and not every idea that's not WMS ideas are just these crazy, horrible people and these, terrible ideas, but you could see the people that you learn to like and respect and appreciate, whether it's Frank Turek or the rest. I could see how that would be helpful in that. And yeah, like you said, it is kind of unfortunate that more members don't have that, which I'm sure makes their transition out so much more difficult. I've heard of former members who have been out of the church for years, many years, that still live in just fear, just total fear of the doctrines, because they just don't know that they can be answered and refuted, and they don't know that there's other information out there that can, solve their questions. And they don't, probably a lot of it is just they have that fear to even go and look into things, but they know they don't want to be in the church anymore. And so they just kind of live in this oppressed state for years after leaving. And so that's why I think it is so important what this is here, having these sort of conversations. And like you said, having that information available out there for people, to help them avoid having to live with that, because that's kind of, at the end of the day, that's the point of this, is just that there is so much oppressive teaching inside not only this group, many other groups, of course, but for sure this group, there's what you just mentioned before, just having to look at the world in this way of, I really appreciate and respect Frank Turek or William Lane Craig and what they're saying. Kind of sucks that they're all going to hell because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, whether people realize it or not, that's a pretty burdensome way of thinking about human beings around you. And I don't think people really realize how much that impacts you internally to view the world in that way. Because when you're viewing other people in that way, that kind of shows how you're thinking about yourself in relation to God. And I think there's just so much fear that's going on there that is just not how people should have to live their lives.
It's very unnatural. It's very, very strange. And especially in the last few years, there's been like, you know, I don't know what you would want to call it, but like a Christian renaissance. You know, there's everybody's Christian now. Like Joe Rogan's Christian now. You know, all these guys that would never talk about it, they're talking about it now. And you're just having to look at these people that you've watched for years, speak about Jesus and speak about God and the Bible, but you have to tell yourself, well, too bad. They're not going to go where I'm going to go. They need to believe in Mother. I hope they can believe in Mother before it's too late. You know, it's very strange. It's you know, holding two different feelings at the same time, right? And it's just, it's very unnatural.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, when you joined initially, how old were you? And so how old were you? And then what was it about what they were telling you? What was it about this message that you were getting that drew you in, that was compelling to you? And I suppose with that too, like, so how old were you, and like, where were you at in life, I guess, to make that something that kind of just got its hooks in you? Because I think most people, you have to be in a pretty particular state to have a group like this be able to get hooks in you. That's ultimately what the you know, cults, kind of their strategy is just to get hooks in people. And so what was it that drew you in the first place?
So I was 21, but if anybody's that's listening, and maybe you guys could remember this, when you're 21, you are like a child, essentially. You're just barely getting out of school. I was in college. I was going to Salt Lake Community College, but I still felt very young. You know, I felt very young, even though I was that age. And I believe I mentioned this on the first interview I had with Adam, but in college, it's where I started the whole idea of it's kind of funny to talk about it now. The idea of like the Illuminati, secret society, the Freemasons, that was very, very popular at that time. You couldn't open up YouTube or any other app that wouldn't talk about it. So it was all over the place, and you know, they would clip all these movies, music, you know, events together, and it kind of presents it as this thing where, hey, look, there's this, you know, there's most likely this secret society out in the world, and it's all for the occult. It's all for evil stuff. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and I was just in there for maybe prior to being preached to, maybe like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. It had been quite a while, but I had essentially got to the point where I told my wife, I think we need Jesus. Even though I hadn't gone to church for like 10 plus years, same thing with her. I said it out loud. I think we need Jesus, because look at some of these things that are seemingly out in the world. So I hadn't been looking into it. You know, I wanted to be like, let's be Buddhist because we need to find peace inside. I had been thinking about getting like religious, like Hindu tattoos at that time. Just something, you know, just extend my hand out into anything, right? Whether it be Eastern religions, whether it be internally meditating. So we were trying things. I was definitely trying things, searching for sure. So when the couple that preached to my wife came across her, she was at University of Utah. She was in the library. She was studying. They came across to her and they said, hey, we belong to a church. We study only the Bible. And this is all that we focus on, not like other churches where they just make things up, funny enough. And yeah, this is all we talk about. And I believe they shared with her about Sabbath day and the Passover and a little bit of weeds and wheat. So she was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe that's why so many churches exist. Hey, by the way, my husband has been talking about wanting to know who the devil is. Do you guys know who the devil is? And of course, I think at that moment, that's when they're like, oh yeah, we do. It's, come today, come to our church today and we'll talk about it. So she calls me shortly thereafter. I had just gotten off of work from training at this new job I was gonna have. And she's like, these people came out of nowhere. They were flipping through the Bible like crazy. They know everything and they know who the devil is. They want us to come today. And I was, even though I had said we need to know who Jesus, I was very paranoid at that time. And I was like, I don't know. That sounds weird. Maybe they're tracking us. Maybe they know that we've been viewing their content or something like that. And they're trying to take us out. And she's like, no, they're super Christian. And I was like, describe them to me. And she said, it's a white guy and an Asian girl. And I was like, does she speak English? And she's like, I don't think so. She wasn't talking. I was like, oh my God, that's weird. That's weird. Well, I was like, okay, well, let's talk about it when you get home. And she came home. She was very excited. She's like, yeah, it was really amazing. I think we should go. We should give it a try at least. The entire time we were getting ready, I was just thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go, but I was still getting dressed. We were driving and I was like, this is probably not a good idea. When we showed up, we saw the couple. They were, young, on the young end. So they looked very nice. They looked very good. So I was like, okay, this is no problem. But yeah, that's essentially kind of how we first got our foot in the door.
Well, you definitely joined an Eastern religion. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got that one.
And they did show you the devil, just not in the way that you thought.
Yes, they showed me who they looked at as the devil.
So, Adam, I guess talk a little bit about your relationship with Erick and the church, and that what was that dynamic like? Because I would imagine it's got to be at least a little bit weird to be kind of now sitting here with a former deacon, one of your leaders. Is it unexpected that he came out?
Yeah, it was really unexpected because, before I left, he was the last person I talked to before everyone cut me off. And so, yeah, it is pretty interesting because, we could probably get into that story. I'll just tell it real quick. So basically, before I had left for good, I guess, I stopped keeping service. I was still meeting with missionary Casey and studying with him, and then kind of people just stopped talking to me after that. I didn't block anybody or anything. They just gave up on me, right? They need to know, there's kind of a saying, you need to know when to give up on someone, right? When they're just too far gone or something like that. Anyway, and so I hadn't been going for a while, and then Erick texted me and was like, hey, how's the family? How are you doing? Let's meet up. And so we ended up meeting up at a chicken sandwich shop, which was really wasn't that good, but I don't even remember what it was called. It really wasn't that great. Yeah. And so I met with him, and at that point we were sitting down, we had our food, and I was like, okay, deacon, we can go one of two ways. We can do the, you're a deacon, I'm a follow-away, and then we can have a good time. You can just go back and say you tried, and I'll just play the follow-away part or whatever. Or I can actually tell you why I'm not going anymore, why I decided to step away from the church. And he thought about it, and he was like, tell me why you decided to leave the church. And he did it in a weird way. He said, he gave me this weird analogy, because this church is full of analogies, right? And so he gave me this weird analogy where it was and correct me if I'm wrong, Erick, but you're if somebody's sick or somebody has an illness and you have the cure for this illness, right? Wouldn't you want to give them the cure? And then you're like, my illness is coming to Zion. So, or something like that. You said something around those lines.
Man, this place really we can't ever have a regular conversation. Everything has to be a Bible study format.
He was telling me a parable, but I didn't really understand what a parable was. But anyway, so I got the gist that he wanted me to continue with the second option, which was telling him why I left the church. And so I just laid it all out. I was like, okay, buckle up. And I just boom, 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 like all these things, why I left and everything. And of course he couldn't answer any of it, right? He had no idea about it because, I'm already on the other side using my critical thinking skills, researching all this kind of stuff. So it was no match for anything that he had. And at the end of the day, it was probably like an hour or so, right? I think it was just before, it was like a Friday. And so the next day was Saturday or something like that. And my wife and my kids come because they came to pick me up because they were in Salt Lake at the time. And so we got done. We hugged and we're like, basically in my mind, and I think in his mind too, it was like, this is our last hurrah, right? This is our last hug. This is our last interaction. Because I know how it is, right? At this point, I watch Great Light Studios. I'm like, okay, at this point, we're done. And so he hugs my kids and says hi to my wife. And in his mind, he's like, sorry, I tried to save your dad. I tried to save your husband. I tried to bring him back into the fold, but he's too far gone. That was his mindset. And my mindset was like, I planted seeds, right? At least I got to plant some seeds. And then fast forwarding, a few months after, this discussion, my video dropped, and that's what kind of really sealed the deal for him because he was thinking about that for the next few months until my video dropped.
Like every day. Every day. I was like, just ask him. I would shut it down.
Yeah, and then so finally he texts me. It's like, hey, what are the 3 questions that you had when you were talking to missionary? Because at that point he was really trying to, cross that threshold because enough was enough at that point. But going back to when we were in the cult, my relationship with Erick was he was always my leader, right? I remember when we were in the house church, he would come and give the sermons, and I would be announcing for him, and he would be delivering the sermons, and I would be singing the songs and presiding over the service. So me and him go back as far as I can remember. Mm-hmm. He was my group leader for years, and really, if I had any issues, I would always really go to Erick. Like, he was my go-to guy as far as any issues and stuff. And he always was very cordial with me. He was very respectful with me, and he was very real with me. I would say as far as any of the leaders I had, he was the most real leader. Like, honestly, the Erick you see here, it's basically the same Erick I know that was in the cult. But he's just more, we still have like the mannerisms, and we still have the way of speaking still. We still have the weird tics. I don't think we'll get rid of him ever, but he's still the same Erick. And I feel like I'm still the same Adam, but like he said before, just the way we're just forthcoming with information now, the way we're just forthcoming with our thoughts, our feelings, and we're more just real than we were in the past. Instead of having the fake dancing around subjects, we just tell it how it is now. But my relationship with Erick was very, he was my best friend for years, essentially. Like, anything I needed, I always went to Erick. And if Erick couldn't answer it, or which was pretty rare, I would go to Eddie, which was the overseer at the time. And so it is weird. It is weird being, across the aisle from him now, being on Great Light Studios. But I think it's actually really healing, and it's really refreshing to me because I feel like this has been a long time coming. And I feel like through this interview, it's going to help a lot of people, especially in the Salt Lake City church, because they've lost probably close to like 50 members already. And they're holding on to the ones that they do have for dear life, just squeezing them like nobody's business, and just really trying to instill as much fear in them as possible. And I think this will be a very useful tool with me and Erick and everyone else who's working behind the scenes to really just show them like, hey, we're not going anywhere. We're not demon possessed. We're not like, I'm still the same Adam. He's still the same Erick. We're just not in the cult. It's pretty simple.
Yep. Yeah. So, Erick, you're a little, you're closer to the Salt Lake branch, having left later than Adam. So kind of, I was talking a little bit to Adam before you joined us earlier about the troubles that Salt Lake is having. Can you talk about that a little bit and describe what's going on there as far as you know?
Yeah, it's to understand like the severity of what's going on there. You got to look back to the early days of Salt Lake. Salt Lake is this, like, it's essentially in the middle of nowhere. We're essentially 10 hours away from Denver. We're 10 hours away from San Diego. We're 10 hours away from LA. We're just out in the middle of nowhere, essentially. And we're not, the I-15 is not littered with multiple churches every 20 minutes. So when people from the East Coast or from people from the West Coast, especially the West Coast, because we were established by a West Coast branch, San Diego, when they would come to Salt Lake, they would say, wow, this place is really like homey. It's like the early days because it's one place, everybody's friendly. In the early days, there wasn't much separation between the brothers and the sisters because there was only a few of us. So we were really buddy with, respectfully, of course, brothers with sisters. We kept our distance. We didn't, it was very respectful. So when anybody would come from San Diego, they would say, wow, this place is really nice. There's no authority structure here. There's no group leaders. There's no deacons. There's no missionaries that are like breathing down your neck. And yeah, it's just open. It's just free. I can just be myself and just, so, we had repeat visitors to Salt Lake, and they would always say, you guys don't know how blessed you are to be in Salt Lake. This place is like, you can really feel mother's love in this place. You can really feel how amazing it is in here. And I think that's why a lot of people came. Multiple couples from San Diego came to be in Salt Lake. I never saw it, of course, because I'm here. So I never saw other people like fighting to go to a church 20 minutes away in California. But they made it seem like, no, I'm fighting to get out here. The cost of living is cheap. The people are nice. Yes, there's a lot of Mormons, but they're not atheists, psychos, on the street, or weird looking people that are, there's not a crazy homelessness issue. They were just ranting about how amazing Salt Lake was. And that was always a point of pride for me, being able to be in this place. So yeah, we received a lot of people. It really grew to be this really amazing thing. And we had an overseer for about 10 years, which was not normal. You hear about overseers staying in a particular place for 2 years, maybe 3 years if they can really extend it, but they would usually get shuffled around every 2 years. And the idea was that Salt Lake was so nice and amazing, and there's so much potential that they wanted to be here. That's kind of the thought process, at least. So to fast forward to, people leaving, I mentioned in the interview with Adam, but those same people that came started to leave. They started to, separate from their spouses. Their families were broken up. One would leave, one would stay, one would disappear off the face of the earth. And you just never knew what happened to these people. And it got really depressing. And by the time when Adam had left, I had, as I mentioned with him, I had bit my tongue and I never said anything. I never reached out. I just obeyed and said, Father and Mother will take care of them, but I'm not going to worry about them. Let them figure out kind of their life. But when it came to Adam, I was like, I know this guy. I know this dude. I know him and his family. I know his kids. I'm not just going to not say anything. So met with him. We agreed to disagree. His interview came out and it was shocking. I snapped. You really kind of snap out of it. You're like, oh, damn. Sorry. I don't know if I can say damn or not, but
Go for it.
Oh, damn. Like, that's true. Like, oh my gosh, why have I never had these thoughts? And I looked at his content and many of the content out there for a couple weeks before I brought it up to my wife. She was like, thank God, because this place is miserable. She's kind of the other side of the spectrum. I was always kind of positive and a people person, and
Sounds like she was ready to get out.
She had been ready. She had told me, and I told her, I was like, this is sometime before this year, but I told her, I was like, babe, it's the truth. They have the fees.
Where else would we go? Right?
Where else would we go? What's the alternative? Yeah. And I was like, until now, there's nothing I would want to, until now, I have not seen anything that makes me want to leave, even though I had not been looking or had been asking the right questions. So, so we decided to leave shortly after Passover of this year. We left on Resurrection Day. I was definitely planning on speaking to my siblings about it and just letting them know the major inconsistencies with this group and just how it was not possible for me to stay. It took them some time. It took some of my family members some time to realize where I was coming from, and they had also decided to leave. So we're not talking about a couple months, few months, a couple years members. We're talking about long-standing original foundation pillar members in Salt Lake are leaving this place. So fast forward to today, you just hear about just the most depressing, while we're speaking now, multiple families left since I left and me and my wife left. Multiple families have left. So it's kind of barren. I believe one of the churches, we had a separate church in Draper. It's closing its doors. It was only open for a year, and I think the plan is for them to go back. So there's no growth. Long-standing members are leaving, and Salt Lake was always a place that got skipped over for those visiting groups to Korea. So even though I was a 13-year member, I was a deacon, I brought in a bunch of my family, I won the 10 Talent Award, I never had the opportunity to go to Korea. I was always passed up for somebody else, which is fine, whatever. But this year, since I shared this with a few other people in the Salt Lake church. And I believe because this year it became such an issue about people leaving, I don't know the specifics of it, but I know 3 long-standing members were given the opportunity to go. And I'm like, why didn't this happen 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago? We could have gone, why
damage control.
Yeah. So that's happened. And Zhang is specifically saying, oh yeah, this is persecution that we have to undergo. This is persecution that we have to endure. This is supposed to happen because, how else can you confront these issues that are being brought up? You just have to chalk it up to divine processes. This is meant to happen. This is prophesied to be occurring. Where it's just people asking the wrong questions. I don't know how that's persecution.
Yeah.
So they're bringing people out to Korea and specifically pacifying them with these words. Zhang, we had received multiple calls from Zhang, Heavenly Mother, over the years, and it was always essentially the same. I love you. I miss you. Bear good fruit. Father's coming soon. That's it. Just over and over. I love you. I love you. I miss you. This is not to mock her, but this is literally just all that we would get, And I would tell myself, wow, in her great majesty, I don't know if you've seen the word or the movie Dogma. At the end of the movie, Alanis Morissette plays God. She's a female and she opens her mouth and, right, the 2 angels, their heads explode. So okay. I thought to myself, if she really speaks her voice, my head will explode. So she has to say something like, I love you. I miss you. Father's coming soon. That's all she can ever say. But this particular year, scheduled a call to us. I believe it was specifically for us, not just us calling her. And hey, I just want to let you know the people that have left us recently, they were never our family. They were from us, but they left from us. They're never part of us. They're not your family. They're not our family. Even though they were with us the entire time, they were never part of us. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. And, some of the people that have left still have family in the church. And old time classic slander that was pitted against the church was that the church separates families. They've worked tirelessly to promote families and unity, and we're not that kind of group. And we keep everybody together. Of course, they would never show somebody who's in the church by themselves, whose family never came, whose family has attempted to, reveal some of these inconsistencies to them. They've never interviewed them. And how are you doing? How do you feel? No, they would just show the husband and wife whose children were baptized, who were born and baptized in the church. Hey, does this place separate family? No, of course not. Look at my families right here. They're they're children. So they've done a lot of work to erase that idea. And early on, I was like, that's probably the most laughable one, because my entire family's in the church and it didn't separate us. But obviously, I think a better way to phrase it is you separate yourself from your family. You're in the church all the time. You're dedicating a bunch of time to this place. So you kind of take yourself away from them and it makes them upset. So to see them work this hard and then to realize that Zhang specifically called to say they were never our family, it just let me know that when they had a little bit of scrutiny, when they had a little bit of people asking the wrong questions, they just, we have to extinguish this somehow. Let's revert to our old classic tactic. They're evil.
Demonize them.
Yeah, that wasn't a Freudian slip. That was a direct message. Yes.
So if God the Mother, Heavenly Mother who loves us, she could have said, they are mine still. They belong to me. Keep talking to them. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. They'll be back. I love them. Instead of saying that, she says, don't worry. Don't even think about them. Don't talk to them.
Mother's love.
So it's like, wow.
Don't you just feel warm and fuzzy? I mean, that's what my mother says. I mean, if my brothers or sisters ever do something to upset me, that's the phone call I get. Cut them off. Don't talk to them. They're never
my children anyways. Yeah,
I get that all the time. Oh, you guys don't get that? Oh, maybe it's just me.
I guess just you, yeah. Yeah, I think that's what a clear indication of, there's thousands of those of what's really at the heart of this. And it's so sad because there's the members and even some of the leaders like yourself are not, these intentional deceiving, just wanting to trick people and wanting to, gain power and get money and all this. But I think what you see at the higher up levels is at least it's my suspicion that is exactly what's going on at in the heart of this organization. Like that's what fuels it. It's just greed and power and narcissism. And that's why you see, this lady who's supposed to be God, who's supposed to be like the most clear and pure expression of love and what that should look like, and like you're talking about these phone conversations where she'll call and she'll say, I love you, I miss you. I'm sure she probably said that at one point to people that eventually left. And it's like, well, why didn't she just say, hey, by the way, there's some people in this church who are not really mine, and they're going to eventually leave. Instead, it's like she'll, she'll try to manipulate and love bomb these people and say all these things until they step out of line in one little way. And then it's, oh, well, you're nothing to me. I'm going to now talk about how, you should not even be paid attention to because you're worthless. You're not benefiting me or this organization. And so, you're dead to me, essentially. It's just such a clear indication of what that woman is, and it's so frustrating when you stop and think about it, the power that she holds over so many people through this doctrine, and that's ultimately how she treats people. It's not okay.
It's crazy because something she doesn't do much other than like say those things like, I love you, I miss you, are you hungry, do you want to see Father, are you excited to meet with one another? She doesn't do much, but there was a time when I was possibly going to go to Korea, but it didn't materialize. But I'm psyching myself up. I'm telling myself, she's not going to look at me, she's not going to know my name. She's going to stumble. I'm going to look at her stumble. She's going to nod off in service or something. It's going to be the most let down situation, but I need to not let that affect me. She's still God in the flesh. So you kind of do it to yourself. You're psyching yourself up for this interaction you're going to have with her. Some people learn Korean. They learn Korean songs. And when you watch the visiting groups, they all come back and they all say things that are, she doesn't do anything. She kind of just sits there and just repeats some things. But they say, I felt a ball of energy as soon as I was in front of her, and I could feel, her spirit. And people would say, I have seen love and I will dedicate my life to this because of Mother. So people are psyching themselves up. They're doing these rituals beforehand, and they're just getting in the mindset that she is all these things where she's not, And so whenever we say, oh yeah, this church is inconsistent and it's not telling us the truth, they're having to unwind this thing in their mind but she's a ball of energy, but she's love itself, but what you're telling me that she's not. So it's too traumatic. It's too great for some people to do, to unwind all that they've they put her on this pedestal, and they really make these things that they thought would apply to God to her. So it's like you're asking them to not believe in amazing, almighty, loving God. But yeah, that's essentially the situation in Salt Lake. There are a lot of damage control, a lot of demonizing the dissidents. They fell away. They're never part of us. I've heard that some younger members are being cut off because a lot of some of the members were children, were like babies when they came in, and they grew up with one another. So it's not like me leaving another adult, like, all right, man, I'll see you later. Take care. I hope you get out of this place. They're seeing essentially their sister, their brother, their cousin, their best friend. They grew up together, and they're telling him point blank to their face, don't talk to them anymore. They're not part of us. They're not with us. They're demon possessed. And to their credit, I hear some of these kids saying, no, I don't believe this. I don't believe this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here anymore. And children are getting put into Bible study rooms with adults, and the adults are telling them why you shouldn't be talking to other people, why you have to believe in God the Mother, why you have to believe in Ahnsahnghong, why you have to believe in all these things, because there's no alternative. So it's, seeing it from its height to where they've gone, it's just very bleak. And I don't know what is keeping, of course, the power of a cult, the power of belief is what's keeping them there. But I would just hope I asked myself those questions when I was still in. I would just hope that they're asking themselves the question as well. There's no way you could possibly believe your family members are demon possessed. There's no way you could possibly believe other children are demon possessed. There's no way that all your friends that you grew up with in this church, children and adults, are all just collectively lying to you.
Yeah.
So you hope
Can it
that
really be that simple?
You hope that they have these thoughts to themselves, which they probably are, but they're stopping their own
and I'm
thoughts.
sure that's what these Bible studies are for, is to nip that in the bud and get kind of ahead of that. Like you were talking earlier about the how'd you say it? Like giving people the shots to kind of
Vaccination.
Yeah, the vaccinations to kind of prepare them for these thoughts, and that's what cults are really good at doing, is just kind of preemptively knowing, okay, here's the facts, here's the information, here's the criticisms that they're going to face. So let's go ahead and let's create our story for how to answer that, for how to cause that to be pushed under the rug, and let's get ahead of that. Let's start getting this story into people so that they're ready to not be impacted by it. And that they're doing that to kids is just...
Yeah, and a lot of times it's their parents, right? And if it's not their parents, where are their parents? If it's someone else taking them into a Bible study room and trying to indoctrinate them like that, I want to ask the parents, where are you? That's not your response. That's not Casey or whoever, the overseer's responsibility. You're the parent. You need to be involved in your kid's life. You are responsible for your kid, not the church, not Zhang Gil Jah. You as an adult, as an American citizen, are legally responsible for your child and your child's well-being. So if you're not in there, at least with them, whoever the leader is, whoever's doing it, then you need to grow up a little bit, and you need to go in there and take care of your kid. You need to be a parent. You need to be there for your child. And if you're not, then there's some underlying issues that really, really need to be fixed in this place, because and if you're the parent doing this to your kid, why are you doing this to your kid? There's so many things that are just so wrong with what's happening right now, that it's just, these are children. They're minors, right? Like, quit scaring them to death. Quit telling them their friends are demon possessed because they think differently. They believe a little differently. Like, good grief, guys, come on. Like, anyway.
We would always, at least with myself, but we would always look at being in Utah. We would preach to primarily people who were LDS or had left the LDS church, and we would hear their cases, and why, if you don't mind me asking, why did you leave? Oh, it's because A, B, and C. They treated me this way. They looked at my family this way. And, the leaders, they were really awkward around me, and I didn't like, and we would always tell us, well, I'm glad we're not that way. We're glad we're not like that. We're all love. We're all peace and love and whatever. And I'm like, we're literally becoming the things that we hated about the LDS church. We're becoming, we're living long enough to become the bad guy.
We're becoming Babylon.
Yes, absolutely.
And they used to say the difference between Zion and Babylon is heaven and hell. Well, right now it seems like there's an awful lot of hell going on in Zion.
Yeah. Yeah. So strange times in Salt Lake City, Zion.
Speaking of hell in Zion, Eric.
Oh yeah. So thank you. Good.
That was a good segue.
Yeah, good segue.
I didn't even plan that.
So again, Salt Lake was like literally heaven on earth, in my opinion, especially in the early days. It was like, who wouldn't want to be part of that place? So I always took it as like the leaders have our best, they have the best in mind for us. They're always looking out for us. So this place is really amazing. Obviously time goes by and then things are kind of flesh themselves out a little bit. But I always thought this is like a good, holy, pure place. If you watch any of the sermons, it always opens up to like heaven, and everything is like unicorns and rainbows and majestic palaces, and you're just like, wow, this place is like really heaven right now. So as I was mentioning earlier, Jordan, that, I would always look at, outside sources to look at religion, look at Christianity. So I had looked up I think, Adam, is the Midnight Cry?
Yeah, about the failed second coming of Christ through the William Miller movement.
Yeah. It's like a PBS History Channel level production video. It's G, pretty much PG. Historical, it's nice. I saw it myself. Of course, I did the thing where I applied it to my church, and I was like, wow, it fits perfectly. It's all together. It only strengthened my faith. I want to share this with my brothers, so let me strengthen their faith as well.
And to be clear, real quick, the William Miller movement is like a foundational doctrine for the WMSCOG. Like, it's not like just some random thing. Like, this is what we teach. This is like the fulfillment of some of the feasts, like the Feast of Trumpets. Like, it's not a nothing burger. It's essential cornerstone of WMSCOG doctrine.
We talk about it at least twice every year, like multiple day educations, multiple hour education. So it's like, it's not like I'm bringing, hey, look at this Buddhist religion and then look at this weird abstract concept. No, it's like, it's a thing we talk about. So I said, I brought up to the overseer at our church, and, hey, I want to watch this with the members. I think it'd be really informational. I think it strengthen their faith. Oh yeah, will you send it to me? I'll watch it first just to make sure it's kosher, and then I'll let you know. I was like, yeah, of course. I thought it was going to be like a day or two. I sent it. A couple days went by. I checked in. Hey, the Sabbath day is closing in. It's closing in on us. Is it okay? I kind of planned that for. I actually had made a plan for the month of whatever that month that was. We're gonna watch like History Channel documentaries, just kosher ones, like cool ones, like good ones, on Sabbath days. And this is going to be the first one. No, I didn't get to it. I'm sorry. Let me try tonight. And I reached back out again. He's like, I'm sorry, it just keeps slipping my mind. So I was like, okay. All right. So no, right? So no. And I was like, okay, well, we'll do something else. A little bit of time passes by, but it's still fresh in my mind. And in the group leader chat that I was in, we were told, so it was group leaders and unit leaders. It must have been like upwards of 15, maybe 20 people. I think some who had just become unit leaders were invited as well. Hey, we're going to watch this. We're going to watch a video. It's called The Journey Through Hell, A Trip Through Hell. I thought it was a Church of God production. So it's still PG, even though it talks about hell, kind of. And I was like, okay, let's go, whatever. I go to it, and we're in a conference room. And when we get there, we're told by the overseer, by the way, we just want to let you guys know, this is not made from our church. This is made from a different church in Korea, some random church. Didn't tell us which one it was. This random other church in Korea, they made this video about hell. Obviously, it's not what we believe, but I think it could be really good for our faith. So we're going to watch it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be like theological, philosophical. Like, what are we going to look at right now? And he turns it on. It's like from the early 2000s, really crude, a really, really crude video. It's fully in Korean. And it has subtitles, but it starts to say, there's this member who is an artist in our church. And, they were inspired to make paintings of hell. And this is going to be a video going through this member's paintings. And it was in the evening time, so it just made it even better. It was fully dark outside. And the first image, and this is a little explicit, so if somebody's woozy, you can, I don't know, skip. But the first image was of this demon creature with a spear ramming it into the genitalia of a woman. She's tied on her arms and on her legs, and it's very explicit. Blood, the expression on the woman's face is seen, some terrible looking demon beast thing, and my jaw dropped. I could not believe it. I was like, what is happening right now? What is happening to my precious Zion church building right now? And I look over and everybody's just intently watching. And it just goes from painting to painting. You see, they base it off of like sins from people. So there's greed. So there's a man chasing money and a serpent is coming out of his body and it's eating him at the same time. Unruly children. It shows a child that has boils all over their body just because they didn't listen to their parents. It talks about the desire for the world. It would show like hellish landscapes, like barrels and barrels and barrels full of human body parts, like arms and legs and heads sticking out. There's somebody cut open and there's heads stuck inside this person's abdomen, their chest cavity. And men having their genitalia cut off, beasts like ripping off someone's arm and feeding on their arms and their legs. And it was like 40 minutes of just the most grotesque, shocking images that I had ever seen, really.
Doesn't it show something? I remember somebody saying it shows something about like abortions.
Yes, I believe so. To be honest, at that moment, I was just protecting my sanity. So I was just like, I guess I'll watch this, but this is crazy. It was, I believe, abortion was one of them.
Which kind of contradicts.
Were kids watching this too?
In those who were with me were all adults.
Okay.
And
well, that's a plus.
Yeah, I guess. But so we watched that. I'm sure there was something about like abortion, which we can touch on again in just a moment. But so they said that this isn't something we believe, but we think could benefit our faith. Yeah.
So why would they show that? What were they trying to accomplish there?
How was your faith after? Is what we want to know.
So the video ended, and it was really strange because at the end it showed the pastor of this Korean church, Jesus specifically blessing him to do what's right in his name, with his congregation. So I'm like, okay, this is just propaganda at this point. But it ends. The overseer stands up. He turns around. His face is red. And all he says, the lesson in all this was, well, let's not go to hell. Good night.
Good Lord.
There was no lesson. There's nothing.
Gosh.
There's no time. We do fragrances for almost anything. There's no fragrance time. There was nothing. But my hand was over my mouth. Just, I couldn't believe it. I looked. This conference room it's facing the freeway and it has like these large windows from floor to ceiling. And for a portion of the video, I was just looking out and I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening right now. This is unbelievable. So it ends, everybody leaves, nobody talk. I think one person I walked next to, I was like, that was crazy, right? And it was the end of the night, so I just got out of there. I told my sisters, because they weren't there. My wife wasn't there. This other deacon wasn't there. And it wasn't like, I just said it like, hey, I know tonight they made time for us to watch it, but I wouldn't ask about it. It's just some really ghoulish, terrible like images that you don't need to look at, man. So I was like, if they bring it up to you, it's up to you, but I wouldn't ask about it. I kind of wish they would have seen it so they know what I'm talking about, but there were plenty of other people in the room with me that witnessed it as well, men and women, and it was ghastly.
So did they just decide they needed to give everybody a healthy like dose of fear? Like let's just get a dose of fear of hell in people and make sure we're,
there can
holding
be
the reins.
There can be no other conclusion, because they just told us we're going to watch this video and let's not go to hell. There is no explanation. There is no fragrances about it. There is no, this is what general pastor said about this, or this is what mother said about this. It was just like, don't sin, don't go to hell. And
sorry, real quick, Eric. And this isn't a one-off, Jordan. I've gotten, since we've done Eric's interview where he talked about this, I've gotten tons of emails and comments all over the country that this was played in their Zion too. Like, this isn't just like a one-off. This is like people have seen
They're
this.
doing this all over, yeah.
They're doing it all over. And as if the WMSCOG has a shortage of images of hell, right? They show images of hell, people burning in hell, almost like, I would say at least half of the sermon at least has some sort of image of somebody in hell or something like that the kids themselves watch. So it's like, I guess that's not doing it for them anymore. So they have to resort to other people's. I mean, I don't want to say this is like, I can't say whether this person had like a mental illness or was like possessed or something to be able to create these images. I mean, I don't know, but I can definitely say it's not the Holy Spirit or a good spirit that would create such images in this case.
Yeah. It's insane. It's insane. It was just, there's no other thing to conclude other than they just wanted to scare the Jesus out of us.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure, unfortunately, it's working very well for a lot of people. The fear of hell is a very, very powerful instrument when wielded by religious authorities, and can really, really get you a lot of control over people and their actions and behaviors. And it's also can be, the worst part about this is how that impacts people, that the internal ways that people, go away from this and then kind of deal with that imagery. And again, it just goes back to how these people are, in groups like this, you're just forced to see the world in a certain way and then to see other people in a certain way. And just the level of fear involved, it's horrible. And it's just so sad that so many people are subjected to living a life where that's what they're perceiving in the world around them. That's reality to them. That this is what awaits perhaps my family that's left the church, or me if I have doubts and leave, and so on.
And I think I don't know, but I guess I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't believe the cult knows the power that they have over people. I mean, you have people, drumming up this idea of who Mother is, of who Ahnsahnghong is, of who General Pastor is. I've had an overseer tell me, General Pastor is not a regular person. Everything short of is like a literal angel in the flesh. Like he's not normal. So don't think of him as normal. His words are not the words of a normal person. So this cult just has people drumming up these concepts of who these people are. So I feel like sometimes they forget the power that they have over people. So when they prepare a video and they say, let's watch this all together, even though they say this is not from us, this is not from our church, in a way it is, because they would have never seen it before that. And they would have never had this concept of what hell is like if it wasn't for this video being played to them and being shown to them. So sure, they can weasel out of saying this is not us, but you showed it to them. You showed it to us. So this is, in a way, this is now what the image of hell is, according to the WMSCOG. So it's, they need to take accountability for that.
I mean, it was in the church.
It's
not like you guys were at someone else's house and they're like, hey, let's check this out. This is cool or something like that. You were literally in the WMSCOG, called by the overseer to come into the room as leaders to watch this video. So you can't say
there's a level of
it wasn't us.
Yeah.
It wasn't us.
There's a level of approval that they're giving to that imagery and even like an agreement of, to end that by saying the lesson is don't go to hell. Well, the implicit kind of message behind that is like, this is what hell is like. This is what you'll experience if you go to hell. And so, it's pretty messed up. But going back a little before, you were talking about the three, you mentioned like the three questions I think that Adam had, and that you were thinking about things for a while after that conversation with him, that they're sticking in your mind. What were those three questions that kind of were things that you didn't really know how to resolve?
It was, I guess, just to clarify that, it was what I was wanting to do was I was going to ask Adam, tell me the top 3 reasons why you can't come back, or why you can't come back to this place. Because when we met up that one time, we talked about a few different things, and we were kind of jumping around a little bit. And all I did was but Adam, we have Passover, so that trumps everything you're talking about. But when time had passed, I was like, I'm going to ask him, what are the top 3 reasons? Like there's only 3 reasons or 4 or 5 reasons that he can't come back. Just to I was still searching. I was still kind of doubting. So I was like, give me your 3 biggest arguments why you can't come back. I never asked him. I would talk myself out of it.
Was it maybe just to kind of see, let's see if I can handle, if he gives me the top things, let's see if I can maybe come up with some way to resolve them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe because I was looking for the end, maybe because I was I wanted to know, but maybe also so that I don't fall away. I don't know. I was testing my faith at that time. I was like, is this 100% the truth? Let me put it up to scrutiny.
One thing I think about when members leave, I just think about how convincing the doctrines are to members when they were, fully committed, and the different teachings and the different hangups that they'll have, and the questions that will arise, like we kind of referenced to earlier, well, where else are we going to go? Who else has the answers? And well, what about Sunday and Christmas and Easter? And all these churches are keeping these things, so there's obviously no answers to be found there. So I guess for you, I would think that part of your process of leaving the church would have to have involved deconstructing from some of those doctrines, and maybe you're still in the process of some of that, but I guess what are some of the doctrines that you have changed your mind about? I guess what are some of the things that you were, what were some of the core central teachings of the WMS that you believed before that now you look at and you're able to say, well, that's obviously false, and here's why? Is there any examples like that you would point to that might come to your mind when I ask a question like that?
Yeah, I got 2 really big ones. So first one is my view of the Catholic Church. So obviously the Catholic Church Bible study, Daniel's prophecy, was the first thing I had studied. It's shortly after that I was like, wow, we just joined a church. This is our church now. Finding out about, well, number one, and I've mentioned this in Adam's channel, but as soon as I realized that the church is lying, they can call it whatever. They can call it, you were too young for you to know that, or we didn't want to bombard you with information, even though they bombard you with information as soon as you walk in the door. We didn't want to bombard you with too much information. That's why we didn't really overly explain some of these things. But when you realize that they are actively lying, you kind of have to look at everything that you've believed from them. So I first looked at, watching content with yourself, with Adam. I think it was specifically a podcast with Anthony out of New York on the Pit podcast. He was just mentioning, a lot of the things that we just took for granted are it's not actually like that. For example, Ostrogos wasn't destroyed in 538. It was destroyed in 554. That alone, I was like, more than anything, I was just asking myself, why don't they talk about that? Like, just why didn't they talk to me about that? Finding out about the Vicarius Filidae being from a fake letter attributed to Constantine, where that's the first and essentially the only mention of Vicarius Filidae, and how the Seventh-day Adventist Church has recanted that, saying the truth doesn't need to be mixed with lies. You don't have to. The truth doesn't contain any lies. Why don't we know that? Why don't we talk about that? If this is a fulfillment of the Church of Laodicea or whatever, why don't we talk about that? So there's this huge, like this big bad monster that I had looked the Catholic Church as. It was my original faith, is what I was baptized into. I didn't see it like that 100% anymore. So, the Vicarius Filidae, the 554, the fact that just the church doesn't talk about it, that just made me come to the conclusion, well, they don't talk about it because their doctrine won't fit anymore if they explain about that. I had seen I had never studied religion like I have since leaving the church, by the way. Like, I feel like I have learned about it a lot more now that I'm free from it, or free from the cult. But now I can like openly explore and study on my own. But there was this channel. It's this gentleman. He does infographics. I believe he has a secondary channel where he essentially was talking about the Inquisition. In our evidence books, it's written down as 50 million people died at the hands of the Catholic Church. 50 million martyrs. I was thinking like 50 million like regular people in the world. They're like, no, 50 million Christians. I was like, I don't even know if there's that many Christians in the world, but I was like, that's a lot. So I watched this infographics piece, and essentially they're talking about, historians have pretty much concluded that the amount of people that actually suffered and died at the hands of the Catholic Church is nowhere near that number. Nowhere near that number. Yes, they did have trials. They did execute people publicly. They did do a lot of terrible things. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. But it just wasn't the big, great number that the cult was telling us anymore. So that happening, and then you stumble across these Christian podcasts where they're like, yeah, the whole myth about Christmas being pagan was completely blown out of proportion. Same thing with Sunday, same thing with like Easter, same thing with any kind of Christian tradition that would be viewed as pagan from particular cults. So that was it was the strongest testimony I believe the church had, and that fell away immediately. That broke apart immediately. The next thing was, I was thinking to myself, okay, so the Catholic Church may not be as evil as I thought it was. It might not be the beast. It's probably not the beast. So then what about the feast though? I have the feast of God, the 7 feasts in 3 times. So that's, that should be something good and true, right? And I stumbled upon the Hebrew Roots channel done by R.L. Solberg. Adam, maybe you can confirm that. Yeah. So he has a channel essentially dedicated to discussing the Hebrew Roots movement. The fact that Christians today try to honor Jesus through the customs and traditions that can be seen in Judaism. So their dietary restrictions, the clothing that they wear, they don't say Jesus, they say Yeshua. They have to say Yeshua. And also keeping of the feasts, right? So you go back even farther and you see, the Sabbath day was being kept by the Seventh-day Baptists way before the Seventh-day Adventists. You see the Worldwide Church of God keeping the feasts. But supposedly Ahnsahnghong is the one that restored the feasts. But they were keeping it in America way before he did. But I was like, this is still truthful, because we have a Bible study about the feasts showing that the feasts themselves were a prophecy to show of the life and actions of Jesus, which is plausible because, the Passover in Egypt, the Passover in Mark's upper room, and then, subsequent Passovers in the desert, subsequent Passovers in the early church. So sure, I can definitely see that the feast would kind of give a glimpse to the works and life of Jesus. But to say it's something you must do, it's something that God commanded us to do and to practice and to do, that comes from this Hebrew Roots movement. And this gentleman, R.L. Solberg, just simply explains that you can definitely honor God by keeping the feast. You can definitely keep the Passover, keep the Sabbath day, say Yeshua, you could do whatever. But to say that is the will of God, it stands contrary to what the scriptures actually say. Saying you should, and then all the verses that we would see as attacks on our faith were just simply Paul saying, you don't honor God with rules or commandments. You just simply follow God because of your love for God, your belief in God. Otherwise, you would still be bound again in those chains. You would be no different than the Jew that would still be living under the law. So those were the biggest things that I was holding on to. It was like my last remnants of my faith. And when those were, first of all, you have to look at the organization that taught you that. They're lying. So, of course, they're going to try to enforce their lies through these teachings. And when you break away from that, then you can see clearly, okay, so this is not what it was meant to be, set up to be.
And then everything would kind of fall apart, because if you remove the importance and significance of the feast, then the significance of Ahnsahnghong and all the rest kind of goes with it. Because what's the point of him? Why would there need to be a second coming Christ? Restoring the supposed lost gospel if the gospel that they're asserting is totally contrary to the New Testament in particular, in the first place. So I'd imagine it kind of would probably feel a bit like a house of cards. And like you said, when you begin with that foundation of, I can see how they lie in the first place, then everything else that they say and teach is probably just held a lot less tightly and with a lot more suspect.
Yeah.
You got that domino effect going on.
Yeah. It's that's why with Adam the reason why I was asking, tell me the top 3, top 5 reasons, is because I still looked at the church as being truthful. So I needed reasons to not, I needed reasons to be able to dissect, look at. But now that I know that they are an organization that lies, twists information, hides information, demonizes people for wanting to ask those questions or look at that information independently, then it's a house of cards. Everything falls apart after that.
Yeah. So what now, I guess, what do you view in terms of the doctrines of Ahnsahnghong, like in particular, because again, I know that's such a huge, significant part of people's belief system. So when you look at all of that now compared to how you did, a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever, like what's the difference there?
Well, when you get into the lore of the WMSCOG, you kind of get to a point where you realize that Ahnsahnghong was a gentleman that saw value in the feasts. Most likely was yes, we should keep the feasts. It's part of our work, but it's all for Jesus. It's all for Jesus. It's all for worshiping God. These days, I'm just like, well, if they believe in Jesus and they attribute it and give it glory to Jesus, I guess that's okay. You can't really fault people for that. But I would say Ahnsahnghong was a guy that was just trying to give glory to Jesus through studying the prophecies of the feast that he learned in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and wanted his congregation to keep the feast as well. And at some point, this, Kim Ju-chul started to apply meaning to the life of Ahnsahnghong. I don't believe Kim Ju-chul really believes Ahnsahnghong is Second Coming Christ or that Zhang is Heavenly Mother. Maybe that's a topic for a different day, but his actions are just forcing square pegs into round circles. He's doing it ultimately, seemingly, so that he can start this new religion. So if you ask me about Ahnsahnghong, I'll say he's a gentleman that tried to learn about the feast, keep the feast, and keep the Passover and give glory to Jesus. What the WMSCOG is now is this perverse, backwards place that, made this, kind of gave Ahnsahnghong the Mary treatment, deified him. He's God. He's all powerful. She's God. She's all powerful. And worship him. Worship this guy now. So it's two different, moments in history. Two different churches. Two different religions. 100%. Especially when you see that Ahnsahnghong explicitly wrote against the idea of a Heavenly Mother and anybody coming up with those ideas. Kim Ju-chul if he really was a believer of Ahnsahnghong, he violated him and everything he stood for when he started this church. He violated his family. He was acting strangely after his death and, has just been acting, seemingly in his own interest. Just made up this new religion, saying that Ahnsahnghong is the second coming and that she's God the Mother. I would say because he doesn't give glory to Jesus, it's something that I would say it's not Christian. It's a farce. It's a lie. I just hope people understand that.
Yeah, I would say WMSCOG is no more Christian than Buddhism or shamanism or anything like that.
Yeah, it really is a totally different story being told.
Yeah, when you watch
entirely different story.
Yeah, when you watch the like the history of the Korean cults that you've had on your channel, Jordan, most of it's just shamanism with a flavor of Christianity, or Buddhism mixed with Christianity. It's just I always call the WMSCOG like the Temu Mormons or like the Alibaba Express Mormons, right? Because a lot of their doctrine, I feel like, derives from Mormonism, and that's why I was so attracted to it, I guess, because I was like, well, I was already Mormon. This isn't much weirder. It's a little weirder, but so it's just a Frankenstein of everything. It's just pick and choose here. Let's change this here. Oh, this is out of style. This isn't working now. Let's change that for this. And then that's how you get all these, oh, we never taught that before, or we didn't teach that before, when they literally have printouts or you have notes that literally say exactly what you used to teach, but now, oh, we don't teach that anymore, or whoever taught you was wrong, or you didn't hear me properly when I was explaining it, or whatever the excuse is. That's
Or
how you
that
get these
pastor was
issues.
lying. That pastor, that missionary was incorrect.
Yeah. Yeah. Just covering their tracks. Well, have you had much interaction with the church or other members since leaving? Like, was there pushback? Was there any contention or reaching out to you to try to persuade you back in?
So when I left, we left on a resurrection day. So we, as I mentioned with Adam, I didn't give any signs or signals of us leaving. We were kind of just trying to leave abruptly and explain it to my family before it was heard anywhere else. So no one knew. I was happy, jolly, joyful. I was acting normal as best as I could, even though the overseer was noticing, like, hey, you're not, you live like an hour away, but you're not coming for preaching as often. What's up with that? So, he was noticing for sure because, I essentially report to him. But no one else knew. I don't think anybody really knew until like after the Sabbath day when they didn't see me. No one reached. Two members reached out at the same time, and they both were like sad emoji faces. And this is after I had already spoken to the overseer about me not coming back. And I asked them, I was like, wait, what's up? Why are you sad? And they're like, oh, nothing. And I was like, well, why'd you guys message me at the same time with sad emoji faces? And I just wanted to see how you're doing. I imagine that they were told, and I wasn't, I was just like, yeah, man, I'm sorry, bro. I can't keep going back there. There's just some things I don't agree with. It's just I can't agree with. So, other than that, I talked to a couple people that I would regularly talk to, and all right, well, if that's your choice, that's fine. But other than that, no one ever said, hey, can we talk? Or, hey, do you want to meet up? Kind of just written off. I don't know what the overseer said. I'm sure because we had met the Tuesday. It was a Tuesday after the resurrection day, which was a Sunday. And I had questions. Some of them he didn't have answers to. He said that pastor would be coming to be able to answer, but he may have just said to the members, he asked questions, I answered them, and they weren't good enough, or he didn't accept them. He couldn't accept.
Hey, that's what he said about me too.
Yeah. So it was probably like, yeah, the guy that you guys know, he ate the forbidden fruit. And he's gone now. He doesn't believe in Father Mother like you guys believe.
Spiritually.
He died spiritually. So,
yeah,
don't talk to him. Just change the subject if he talks about religion. Because I had, a lot of people that had been there and known for many years. Nobody reached out. And one guy that I was neighbors with. We moved close to him because he was a member, but. He said, I was like, hey, we need to meet up one of these days. He's like, let me know and I'll meet up with you. And time came when I reached out again and just, he essentially he ghosted me, but he told on me to some other people in the group. I've, other than that, I've gotten some I'll say this now, but I've gotten some harassing messages.
Really?
Yeah, from some existing members. Some really kind of nasty words from somebody.
Like spiritual threats sort of thing, or something different?
Can I say who it is?
Maybe not. Maybe not. Let's let them. They know who they are, right? They know who they are. But it's obviously somebody that knows who I am, knows who my family is, knows
Right.
they know my wife's profession. Let's put it that way. They have my phone number, but they've used a app where you can have a fake number, and they've reached out.
Very brave of them.
Yeah, very bold and courageous, like they're told. And I'm not saying this is not the church as a whole. Of course not.
Yeah,
of course not.
Right.
It's just one disgruntled member that feels attacked because I had left. And I did talk to some people once I left, and I said try to share some things with them. Unsolicited, right, unwarranted, reaching out to folks. I get it, but I had stopped. I hadn't reached out for a long time, and then I got some messages. I just responded, "Hey, I love you. I miss you too. I know that's why you're reaching out. You don't have to, when you feel like not hiding yourself, hiding your identity, you have my number. You can reach out whenever."
Okay.
I experienced something like that too. Oh,
go ahead, Adam.
Sorry, Jordan. I was going to say I experienced something like that too that I was talking to Eric about. I can't prove it, but in my opinion, I think somebody created a fake alias in an email, and they were messaging the church that I'm going to now, the Baptist church, and they're basically saying I was exposing people and their sins and drug abuse and stuff like that just by doing Cassandra's interview, which is not even close to reality when you actually watch the interview. But they were emailing my church saying that they were actually from the WMSCOG in Salt Lake. Obviously, the name is not a name that I'm familiar with or anyone that I talked to is familiar with, so I'm assuming it was some alias someone came up with. And my pastor took me off to the side because he knows I have a YouTube channel, and he was like, "Hey, just want to let you know we're getting emails from this person." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Pastor. Is this causing a problem?" He's like, "No, just thought you should know. I mean, the cult should be exposed. Serves you right." So they just think that But the funny thing is the reason why I bring it up is the slander that they're so worried about, and the slander that they try to peddle all the time about us and about ex-members and you, Jordan. They don't have a mirror, or I don't think they know how to use a mirror, because they are the ones actually committing the slander that they themselves fear so much. But they can't even see it, right? Us speaking facts, logic, our own experiences, they call that slander. But sending anonymous text messages to Erick saying things about his wife, about him, about whatever it is that are contained in it, that's fine. That's not slander. That's fine. That's acceptable in your organization. That's acceptable in your church. Emailing my pastor to try and I don't know what their hope was, that my pastor also operated like a cult and got me kicked out or whatever, but knows very well my story and about you guys, about the WMSCOG, knows everything about you guys, that I've talked to him for months upon months about it. And, sending these kind of things that are clearly not true to him, that's not slander. That's acceptable. That's okay for your organization. You claim so hard not to be a cult, but only a cult acts like this. Only a cult does these things. So if you're trying so hard to not be a cult, to be a normal, non-denominational Christian church, why don't you act like one instead of acting like a cult?
Yeah, just the desperation that becomes so evident in the way that they'll respond to criticism or to members leaving. There's just this frantic, anxious desperation that looks an awful lot like how a narcissistic person might act in a similar circumstance. Just doing anything they can, saying anything they can, whatever it is, just to protect their reputation. Not concerned primarily for the truth, not concerned primarily for internal, self-reflection and trying to figure out, okay, what is it that we might have done wrong, or what problems, what legitimate issues might exist inside this organization that are leading people to move away from it. There's no self-reflection. It's always just a pointing of the finger, pointing away from themselves at every opportunity and casting the blame somewhere else other than them. If just once there was some honest open like self-reflection and admission of wrongdoing and saying, hey, we got this wrong here, and we see that, and we're going to publicly acknowledge that and then try to change that moving forward. It's always just oh no, you misunderstood, or you're actually the evil one for even asking about that. Like you said, Adam, like if you don't want to be identified by the vast majority of the world outside of yourself as a cult, then you gotta do better than that, because that's not gonna cut it. And all you do when you're doing that and you behave like that is you dig yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole.
They're not acting like a church with ethics or morals. They're acting like a crazy ex, and it's just really bizarre.
Yeah,
like really bizarre.
Yeah,
and I have opened up my platform to have anybody and anyone come on to talk about these things openly. Like, you give us no choice but to just talk to ourselves, to talk to other ex-members, to interview ex-members, because nobody in your organization, nobody in your organization has the gall or has the really any ounce of courage to come on and talk to us and be like, no, you were misunderstood. Here's why. Here's the receipts, right? Here's why you're wrong. Here's why what you're doing is false, and what you're saying is wrong or untrue or is unsubstantiated, right? Normal churches do that. That's why they call it debates, right? Even the LDS has debates, and we all know their theology is a bit wonky, right? And we could have a heyday talking about that, but at least they actually have debates, and they're willing to debate their cause. They're willing to debate their claims. Where are you guys at? You're the greatest church in the universe. You're the greatest church in the world. You were founded and funded by God in the flesh, but you're too scared to come onto a podcast that has less than 400 subscribers to talk about your view. Shouldn't this gospel be preached to Samaria and to the ends of the earth and to all nations? Then why are you so scared? Why are you so terrified of a little bit of pushback? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see the apostles in the book of Acts, there was multiple times where it's mentioned how they would go out and they would publicly debate. They would publicly just engage with, the critics and the pushback, and they would defend themselves, and they would let the people that were standing by hearing judge for themselves which party was right and which one was wrong. And it's just one of countless other indications of why this group is labeled as a cult. That's just one reason, like you said, Adam, because even other groups like Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, they will do that. They will engage, maybe not always as often as would be good, but they do. You can go on YouTube and you can find debates. You can find where they will go onto public platforms and they will engage with other views and try to present arguments to defend why it is that they believe and teach what they do. And so it's an open invitation. It sounds like on Adam's channel and as on my channel, as it has been for the last 6 years or however long it's been. I would to have any member on, and if somebody wants to come and and my goal too, even with that, isn't even necessarily to bring people on to debate, but just to have discussions. Like, I just want to have normal human interactions like we're having here. I'd love to have somebody who is listening to what Erick and Adam are saying, who might still be a member, to just come on and we'll give you every opportunity to share why it is that you think they're wrong. And just have a dialogue, an honest, open dialogue where, again, those who listen can judge for themselves, what makes the most sense here, what is actually backed by evidence. And so that's an open invitation to any member or leader in the WMS. We'd love to have you on. And as I always do, I promise that it will be a fair and respectful conversation. Our goal isn't to belittle or insult or to be hateful or derogatory toward you or what you believe. All we're trying to do here is just share openly and honestly what we see as the issues and to share our honest concerns about how we think it's negatively impacting people. But we want to give you a chance to engage with that. But because you so often don't, like Adam said, we're forced to just kind of talk amongst ourselves about it and then be labeled as slanderers, while all the while you guys continue to just hide in your church or hide behind your keyboards and type out your nasty comments every now and again. And then you run away and hide at any invitation to, come on and just prove it, prove what you're saying is true. We'll give you that opportunity. And so, contact information is always available in the description of most every video we put out on this. So just reach out if you're a member who might be against the strain, and maybe you are willing to do that. But probably should wrap this up here. And so I have just one last question for you, and this is kind of what we ask most members, and that's just to, what would you say? Like, what kind of final thoughts would you want to leave with people who are still in the church, with, whether you want to kind of have in mind people that are still in the Salt Lake branch, or maybe just more broadly to members? What would you want to say to them?
Yeah, I got a couple things I would like to say to them. The church has spent a lot of time, slandering, really putting down anybody that calls himself a cult expert. Maybe cult expert is a funny name for that job profession, going around and exposing cults. Sure, I'll give you that. But they've said that there's no degree in the world that says you're a cult expert. They've thrown down Hassan every chance they get, and anybody really that gives himself that title, cult expert. And in doing so, they make themselves an organization that effectively doesn't believe cults exist. In the entirety of my time there, I think we talked about cults one time, and it was about Shincheonji. It was like at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year. And funny enough, they were saying they are not truthful. They come to campuses. They come with different names. They invite you with the promise of one thing, and then it turns out to be an hours-long Bible study. And you kind of realize, that's why they don't talk about cults. Because if they describe cults, they're going to describe themselves. Because they show up to campuses with different names, with different purposes. They promise one thing, and then you end up studying for hours and hours. So they've done a lot they have these couple cartoons on their official website, I believe, or it's a true WMSCOG channel on YouTube. It's this 20-minute long cartoons kind of bashing on the idea of a cult expert, and don't listen to cult experts, listen to the person trying to teach you the Bible. But one question I would ask, something I would say for any existing member to ask themselves is this: do you believe cults exist? Any existing member in the church, ask yourself, do I believe cults exist? The answer should be, of course they do, because you'll see many cults throughout the years and how destructive they've been. So even though your church has a couple videos or channels or whatever talking about how absurd it is for cult experts to exist, it doesn't change the fact that unless you're really gone from reality, you believe cults exist. So you have to ask yourself the question, what are the characteristics of a cult? Lying, deceiving, gaslighting, demonizing others, absolving yourself from any responsibility, putting the blame on the members. For me, that was very powerful in the beginning of this journey, leaving the church, actually discovering what a cult actually is. Because before now, I thought, it's like those the Heaven's Gate people that all drink the juice, or Jim Jones and Jonestown, like really like evidently evil, false cults. That's what I thought kind of it was, right? But no, day-to-day normal organizations that you would never think about, they have cult tactics. They have cult processes, and people end up being in cults all over the world. So I know you believe cults exist. You just have to ask yourself the question. And then the follow-up question is, well, what are the characteristics of a cult? And not beating on people, I'm not saying people are evil. I'm saying the organization you belong to, does it practice any of these cult tactics that you're reading up on, that you're studying about? And when you do that, you piece everything together and you realize, oh, damn, where have I been for the last 10 plus years? I also want to say that just to be fair, to give the benefit of the doubt, I'm not saying that every day in the cult was bad. Earlier in this interview, I'm talking about how Salt Lake City, Zion was like heaven on earth. It was like the envy of every person that would come and visit it. So obviously there were a lot of good days. I got to learn about world religions. Many people who I would preach to wouldn't do this, but I would inquire about, so, what's the main tenets of Islam, or what's your main focus in Buddhism, or tell me why you're atheist. Like, why do you believe there's no God? So I would inquire about these things, but I would do it to better myself, to learn, to be able to convey the truth that I supposedly have. So I took that as a good value in myself to learn about world religions, how to convey ideas. Adam mentioned that I was giving an example to be able to have this conversation with him. How to appear professional. I'm going to circle back to this, that is appearing professional is like a good thing. Overcoming fears, public speaking, walking up to strangers and talking to them about certain things. It's something I feel like I've not mastered, but I feel comfortable to now. Like going to shops and speaking to managers and what have you. Discovering other cultures, because the church is worldwide. Members would make these, they would call it letters to mother all over the world. So I would learn about, countries all over Asia, all over Africa, North America, Europe. So it was really nice to see, cultures all over the world. A sense of connection with people from those places all over the world. This place taught me how to pray, right? It gave me, it was very pacifying. It gave me a sense of peace. I was one of the fortunate people that had their entire family in the church. So I never got to experience I keep praying to mother to let my mom or my dad or my brother or my sister be baptized. We all essentially came in within a year. So it was a very easy thing for me to, that took place. So some might say, well, Erick, these are all pros. So what's the problem? Why are you complaining about this, about the church? Why are you so angry, or why are you still upset with the church? All these things that I just listed, cultures, world religions, overcoming, appearing professional, learning how to pray, having a sense of peace. Though these do seem like proper things, it was all done under the guise of, I'm doing the right thing. These same exact characteristics are learned also in other places that would be considered Babylon by the WMSCOG. The Jehovah's Witnesses can all attest to learning these same things. The LDS Church are, even to this day, they're having like a little bit of popularity all over the world now too. But they're known as being like the utmost professional. They run essentially the state of Utah. And many other, Seventh-day Adventist churches and many other churches, many other places that would be considered cults or Babylons. They learned all these good things as well. So just because you were in a place that taught you all these things, you would easily say about another organization, oh, it was done for the evil one. It was done for the devil. It was done for the wrong purpose. So yeah, you could look at it as a pro, but it's not a single reason to stay in that place. It's no reason to remain inside a cult. Looking back at everything, I don't regret my time in the cult. It was, I learned a lot, right? Met a lot of people, did a lot of things. But as soon as I realized that they are lying, they have been lying. and they're going to continue to lie. They're showing signs that they're going to continue to lie and continue to throw their own leaders, their own members under the bus. At that point, I can't stay in that place. I can't continue to lie to myself. Definitely can't lie to other people. I'm not going to lie to my kids because they're going to grow up. They're going to ask questions. They're going to have access to the internet. And I don't want to do that to them. I don't think anybody would want to lie to themselves or to others or to their kids. But what it takes for you to understand that is to ask yourself the hard question, to actually test your faith. The internet is not the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Every other cult says that. It's difficult to listen to people talk about the place that you've built up for so many years, but you have to face the facts. You have to realize that this is a place that deceived us, will continue to deceive us if you allow them to. But I'm not perfect. Adam said I rebuked him. I believe it. I know I rebuked other people, so I wouldn't be surprised if somebody leaves the church in the future and I'm one of their examples of what I did to them. Because this place has everybody acting different. They're all virtue signaling. They're all saying things, doing things that they wouldn't normally do because it's being promoted by the church. Things like abortions or things like arranged marriages or things like, withholding information because one person wants to come back and they don't want to cause a uproar in the church. So, yeah, that's all I'll say. Learn what a cult is, real cult, like study the psychiatric evidence of what cults are. Don't just listen to what the church says about cult experts. You'll realize that you are in a cult, you've been in a cult, and you've been bringing people to a cult. It's very sad, I understand, but you should realize where you are, what you're doing, and who you're giving your money to. And yes, there were good days in there, but no reason to remain in a place like that.
Yeah, that's really good. And just keeping in mind that, I think that's a great push for people to just go independent from even thinking about which side of the conversation here is right. Is the WMS right? Is what we're saying right? Are the Catholics right? Just to put all that aside for a moment. Just go and look at what is the consensus, the scientific consensus on what a cult looks like, how they operate, what their psychological tactics are, keeping in mind that these kind of ideas and principles of how cults operate are being constructed and formulated independent from, the WMSCOG, meaning that it's not like they're just looking at how the WMS operates and saying, okay, well, here's how a cult operates. It's not like they're copying WMS behavior and then applying that to they're just looking at how, broadly speaking, with years of research in this specific area, how do cults operate? What does that look like? Not just in an organization even necessarily, but in, a business area, in areas of it, personal relationships.
Relationships or like the self-help gurus. That happens there too.
Or politics or whatever. And they're kind of coming to this consensus of, okay, here's the way that these groups operate. Here's the tactics that they employ. So when you look at that, I would be incredibly surprised if you don't look at that and find something or many things that you don't think, oh my goodness, like I can relate to that, or that looks very familiar to me. So, I think that's just a really good push, because I think when you do that, it'll help you to kind of see what maybe some of the issues are with how the WMS operates that maybe you've noticed subconsciously but haven't been able to be honest about. And I think that might be a good way to help you kind of see some of that. And then, just as you're saying, like, you can experience good things in any group. You can have a good, positive experience anywhere. I think if you look at abusive relationship scenarios, very often the one who is, being the victim in that situation will probably be able to point out, and very often will point to the good things, the good aspects of why they choose to remain in that relationship. But just because there might be positive aspects or experiences that you might have within that, it doesn't change the fact that it's ultimately a harmful and damaging relationship. And it doesn't change the fact that it's false. Somebody could hand you a fake lottery ticket that's completely fake, but you don't know it's fake. And it might cause you to have this experience of hope, joy, excitement, peace. You might have this whole new perspective on life. But all the while, you're holding a fake lottery ticket. You don't know it's fake, but the whole thing is a lie. It's still producing this emotional response, but that's no indication. That's no evidence of the truthfulness of that ticket. Ultimately, that ticket could still be entirely false and a fraud, and still, produce this positive, you might be able to say, this positive experience from it. What really matters is that ticket real or not? Is this actually a winning lottery ticket? And that's where you need to take it, and you go and do your research, and you go and compare it, and you go and look into it and say, okay, is there actually evidence that this thing is actually real and true? Because, if it's not, I don't care that it gave me all these good feelings or good experiences. It's fake. It's false. It's leading me nowhere. So I'm not going to live my life in this delusion. And so, I just think those are two great encouragements for people. And I hope that those listening will take it to heart. And so, Adam, I'll just let you, do you have any concluding remarks before we wrap up here?
Yeah, just really quick. The truth will stand up to the extremists of scrutiny, right? So if you're in the truth and you research and you are in the correct path, you are in the only way to God, and you are on the set narrow path, as it were, then no matter how much research you do, you should come back to that path, right? Or you should never even leave that path, to be honest with you. You shouldn't be afraid of research, facts, history, logic. I mean, God is a very logical God. He uses laws to create things, right? We call it the law of physics, right? But God is not a God of disorder. God uses laws to create everything, and everything is bound by laws. Everything has logic and a reason for it to be a certain way. It's not just random. So if you research and you find facts and you find logic and history, there's no reason why it should counter your truth. It should, if anything, it should uphold your truth. And on top of that, the last thing I'll say is, if you have a gallon of water, but somebody puts a drop of poison in it, doesn't mean that water is still safe to drink, even though 99.9% of it's still water, right? So, I was taught over and over again, if it's 1% false, what is it? Even though it's 99% true, it's still ultimately false. So just like you wouldn't drink out of a tub of water that just had one drop of poison in it, why are you still drinking out of the WMSCOG when you can clearly see there's far more than just a couple drops of poison?
Yeah.
That'd be the last thing I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both so much for coming on today. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. A lot of fun getting to meet you, Erick, and hear your story. And Adam, of course, has his channel, Finding the Alternative. So if you want to hear more from Adam, and if you want to hear more from Erick, because it sounds like there's a couple videos over there with Erick featured on them where you can hear more over there. So we'll put links in the video description. But thank you guys very much, and thank you all for listening. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Okay, see ya.
Take care, guys.